Welcome to the LXC.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of the TopHat Lounge. I, of course, am TD Riven, a mid laner for TD Blessed, joining you guys for another week. Today we have Scarlet.
Yes, hello. I'm usually casting, but today I'm podcasting because of a constellation of different things. So it'll be fun. Hello.
And we also have Taco.
I'm here for a good time and a long time. Used to be an old coach.
There we go. Of course, we're joined by Doki again this week.
Yes, hello, people.
All right.
But was there any games this week that caught any of your guys' eyes?
I mean, okay, I brought this up before we started recording, but I feel like if no one watched Warden, because I know it was like very late into the night, dropping point versus Raw was very interesting. It was a bit unfortunate, and I'm glad that it ended up going the way that it was looking it was going, but dropping point actually had to play a 4v5 for about 30 minutes because their jungler had to leave. And so that game was definitely my highlight so far of the week. I didn't get to cast it, unfortunately. Well, casting a 4v5 can be kind of awkward, but it was definitely very fun to watch, at least.
When the game coming back on?
So what you're saying is jungle diff.
I mean, I guess.
I mean,
like,
if I'm raw,
really
I
nice
might just
'cause
say
they did
let's
build
start
up a
Nash.
very big lead before the 4v5s. Like, it
Yeah,
wasn't
we
like
could see
they were
it.
defending.
Oh,
like,
this Ezreal is
5
being
minutes in
very
your jungler
aggressive.
DCs. It was like
Lux
20
finding
minutes in, they
mist.
had a huge gold
Huge
lead
ultimate coming out from the Rel. Rel
bounties
taking
were
no
already
damage. The
available,
Ignite coming in with
and
the
then
shield
Rogers had to
proc. Diego is
slowly
going to
consolidate
go
and bring 5 people
fight,
together
and
to win
my
against like
client
3
first.
dragons. It was really back and
Oh,
forth
it's
in
back.
like a situation that you almost
Diego
never
is
see.
going to
Ezreal?
fall.
Because
The
coordinated
Flash
play,
R
you
coming
don't
through. Ezreal's
see
going to get himself a
5v4s.
double
That's not
kill.
how it works.
The
So
ult is going to come
players are
out.
trying
The
to figure it
Seraph
out on
shield
the
is going
fly,
to come
and I
in.
find that really interesting.
We're
You
gonna see
Even if it's
misses?
Ezreal
unfortunate
looking
why
to
it happened,
find
you know?
his way through, being very
Fair enough.
close to
Syndra?
how he's going to land. The Syndra is going to find the minions are going to
Going
Oh,
into
the damage.
my match of the week. I mean, there's
And
there's some
Ezreal
pretty
is going
good
to find
ones.
himself a
I mean, I
triple
think,
kill. Ari's going to find herself a
just
kill
looking at it.
right now as well, but I mean, in the game
what
state,
an
it's pretty even.
explosive fight,
Angie and
though.
LR went to 3 games in Sentinel, so they had a back and forth series. I think that one's pretty good. I know that TD Harmony had a pretty good game against Siren. So overall, some good ones around the leagues. I think the Hellfire game, well, dropping point game. The 4v5 is crazy. I don't know. They ended up winning, right? And then
Yeah, so what happened is they lost with 4 players and they got an E-sub and basically won the series 3-0 is the way that I consider it. And like Roger did
Wow.
fine. It wasn't like it was a complete destruction or anything. I think game 3 was pretty close. But Coda basically popped off every single game and would have solo carried every game except for the game they lost. So
hey, you know what? Good for them. Good recovery in the end.
Yeah, I mean that does play a huge part of being in old comp play, playing in it, going into a 4v5 just because someone's rage quits. Can be really daunting. Most of the times I would just say I'm done with the scrim for the night just because I'd rather just not find an E-sub.
yeah, I
good
was
job
kind
for
of
them.
surprised. I kind of thought that they would just like, FF and get an E-sub and go to game 3 without playing it out, but they really did try to win that for you. So that's definitely a mental load that makes it harder. Because imagine being up 1-0 in a series, about to win game 2. You lose your jungler, and now you have to play with someone you probably haven't played much with before. It's unfortunate, but being able to come back and win that game 3 is like a huge testament to all those players' mental, for sure.
You know what? I just realized that the sheet was wrong. So I incorrectly talked about Anki. I apologize, Anki.
You're gonna make me inky, so
You know
be
what?
careful.
You know what? I think I make a lot of people Anki. So, I'm gonna have to take a page out of Bingus's book and just say "grr." No, okay. just looking at it. All right, was I wrong? I'm so confused. This sheet just blew my brain. It is okay. We will continue.
Yeah, so Angie apparently this last week played against needlessly large rods. I don't know if that,
They
or
did.
sorry,
Okay, so I
needlessly
was right.
larger rods.
The
I don't know if
larger
that's what you're
rods.
looking for. Right. Don't want to discount their rods. Very important to keep that in check.
No, okay, I was right. So Angie, yeah, it was a 2-1. Okay.
Yes, Angie won that.
I
It
saw
looks
that
like.
right. I did see that right. Okay, cool. Okay, I don't know what's going on. All right. I guess we can just go ahead. Doki, was there any games that took you by the eye?
One of the games in Arbiter, right? So I wonder how that one went. It was off stream, and I only have the win screenshots. So I don't know what exactly happened, but we have someone on the scene.
That is true. Talking about games that you participated in, I also participated in a game in Sentinel off stream, and that one I will talk about in a little bit.
Yeah,
Great
fair enough. Take some time.
Good job,
Yeah.
Doki. I understand.
All right.
Does
Do you want
Doki know that we can't hear him, or is this like one of
Yeah, I
those
just
moments?
realized that.
Well,
I was like,
we
yeah, I was
just
in
kind of
both
filled in
of
for you,
them.
so
Yeah, I was in first Arbiter and Sentinel. I don't think any games really surprised me. I guess I like Arbiter because I got to play against Panda, but that's about it.
Fair enough.
The jungler itself trashy.
Okay. Well.
And the support.
Hmm. All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump into our Arbiter discussion then. No better way to transition.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How did we think? Any cool stuff happened this week, or any fun things that stuck out to you?
Well, Arbiter is actually the league that I've casted the most. I think I'd have to
Mhm.
double check, but Mondays are usually pretty free for me, and definitely for Sector 2. Some of these teams are kind of nuts. Like Conduit Monarch has been undefeated mostly. I think they
Mhm.
have one loss here. I think that happened after the week I streamed them, but their team just continues to perform. Like I don't know who can really take them down. Um, and it's really on the back of Razor's like making draft just miserable for the enemy team. Like he won the last split for Arbiter, and now he just gets to pick Yone or Acel or Smolder now blind, and the enemy team just can't answer it. At least so far. Now we'll see if someone eventually comes up with an answer, especially with the new buffs coming in on mages and assassins. But if Razors continues to be able to just blind pick some crazy scaling champion and perform, that team is going to be very hard to deal with. In addition, we were talking about this earlier as well. Arbiter has slightly changed because of teams leaving the league. We're going to have one less week of playoffs just because of how the schedules work out. So the teams do want to be aware, and people following the teams do want to be aware that whenever we announced the schedule and the different sectors, there were going to be 5 teams moving on. Because we're cutting that first week, it will only be 4 teams moving on to playoffs, and the other ones are out basically. I think that kind of like changes the math on how much you were willing to hide for playoffs and how much you wanted to, just put out there to try to win. Because there are some teams that maybe could have slipped in and been like, okay, once playoff starts, we're actually going to start playing. But before that, I'm not too worried about it. Now they kind of have to worry about it because they are on the cutting room floor, as it were, for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, you look at it, and these games become a lot more impactful. Sector 2 now looking a lot more grim. And you look at Sector 2, and you're just like, dang, very top-heavy league, and then the changes got implemented. So now, there's going to be teams that are going to be like, is it, mentals, and is it worth it? So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out in Arbiter. If anything, it ends up leading to more hype playoffs because we're cutting down a week. That means the playoffs are going to be more top heavy in regards to what teams make it. So, in theory, more banger games. That is the hope.
Yeah, not next week that we're talking about this upcoming week, but the week after, we'll see Team Siren versus Spelling Bee champions, and that's really Spelling Bee's chance to like prove that they can hang out with the top teams, especially with
As long
Siren
as they
having to
can
go through a
spell.
slight roster change. What are you saying, Siren?
Oh, no, you're okay. As long as they can spell, they should be okay.
Yeah, true. So
You
they
would
are
hope.
right now team number 4, and they've got a pretty hefty lead over the rest of the team league for Spelling Bee champions. But you can't drop games, especially whenever you're fighting against the top teams to try to like get your position into a better spot. But also for sector 2 and sector 1, if you're in sector 1, you've got to be wondering like, how does our sector match to sector 2? Like, if I show up at 4th place as sector 1, am I gonna get destroyed by Conduit Monarch? Like, you have to be really careful that you don't get complacent just because you're doing well in sector 1.
That is true. All right. Pivoting conversation just a little bit, just to go over some cool things that happened or some standing changes that happened. TD Royal won 2-0 this previous week, so they move up to first place in Sector 1. We talked about them last week, about the potential of them being able to. I think they were third last week, so this week's win puts them into first. So kudos to them. It sets them up nicely.
Yeah, TD Royal, I recognize a lot of these players from previous splits. I don't think I've been able to personally cast them for this split, but definitely excited to see JFK and how he can do. Especially whenever he's against other teams that have a lot of star power in other solo lanes.
For sure.
I'm gonna say this, and I want to apologize to the org because because I know several people in the org. I didn't know OSG Avalanche was in, and plus I didn't know they were doing that well in LXC. I mean Twinkie as a player and as a coach, me and have tried to play on comp before. Just a lot of issues fell last minute, so we were never able to get into a org or a comp play together. But just the discussions me and him have, I'm really happy to see that they're sector 2 right now, and can potentially battle for section 1.
Yeah, they're doing well for themselves. I guess we can go over really quick what the score lines were for the Arbiter games.
The stream game was Conduit Monarch versus TD Harmony, which was pretty fun to watch if you want to watch the VOD. Again, talking about how Razors is just like completely able to shift the dynamic of the draft is basically the story of that 3-game series, I think.
It was a 2-1, was it?
I think so. I might be mixing up my games. Let me check the
No, you're good.
the probably the best place to find that would be, again, the windscreens are available, which is really nice. Yeah, it was a 3-game series. Conduit Monarch won the first one, and then the second one, I believe the draft shifted pretty heavily. Especially in the top lane. Oh yeah, I remember the series now. It's been a few days. I've slept since then. But the big story, yes, Razors absolutely dominated the draft, right? Like you see a Smolder blind, and then you see a Yone blind. You're like, okay, clearly something happened in this draft that was kind of interesting. But also talking about top lane, Luna Freya versus XIL was very interesting because Luna just picked tanks for the beginning and just kind of tried to survive, and it worked out okay for the first game, worked out okay the second game, and then they put Luna on Rumble, and it just was a completely different game, and Rumble was absolutely dominating XIL for a long time, as you need to in the Rumble versus Kale matchup. But that was the stream game. There are other games, obviously.
That is correct. We did, just to go through really quick, looks like TD Royal won 2-1 versus TAC. We had TPE 2-0 RAR. TD Poro 2-0 Dynasty. Eclipse. And then making sure I got this correct. And then we had RFT 2-1 Red. So those are the games for Arbiter. Is there any upcoming matches for you guys that you have your eye on? Anything exciting for this next week?
I mean, I'm looking at the schedule now. There's obviously more buys than usual, unfortunately.
yeah.
But next week, I know I mentioned Spelling Bee Champions is on stream on week 6, but next week specifically, they're playing against Razors and Conduit Monarch. So
Mhm.
they are right now right on the cutting floor on 4th place, which will be the last team to get in if the standings were stopped today. There's only a few weeks left,
Mhm.
and they've got to face against the number 1 team. So I think that'll be very interesting as well.
I agree. I mean, when you're looking to lock yourself in, and then you're going up against the top team, it's a prove it game. So I'm excited to see how that one turns out. You know, maybe they'll come in with some more fire. Maybe they'll prep with some good prep. Uh, should be an exciting match. I think that one would be mine as well for next week.
So there is something that I just noticed for the stream game. It is TD versus TD. We just talked about that org, and they're going to be on stream against each other. TD Royal versus TD Poro. TD Poro right now is in 5th place, so they need to get some wins to be able to come into playoffs. And TD Royal, as we said, is the top of the league right now.
Yeah, should be fun. I already know the guys are going to be bantering behind the scenes. But yeah,
Oh,
that'll be inner org fun stuff.
oh yeah, it's gonna be all in the org chat.
Yeah, all of the org chat.
We won't
There's-
see it, but it will
there's-
be there.
There's going to be bragging rights on the line. I mean, these guys in house against each other a lot, so this should be fun. We're gonna be. I think that was gonna be a fun match to see from the draft, just to see how they end up playing each other. Yeah, that'll be fun. All right. Any MVPs? I mean, I guess we already talked about Razor for this week. Any other players that stuck out to you? Stuck out? I don't know, Scarlett, if you have any in mind.
Well, again, like I said, Luna Freya played that matchup very nicely, despite having a much different matchup before.
Mm-hmm.
But I also want to shout out some Sector 1 players too. Like I said, JFK, again, doing very well. I haven't looked over the stats of games that I haven't played, but I was curious if anyone stuck out to you, Doki, since you've played against these players, and that's always a different perspective than actually just
Uh,
casting them.
I'm not really into MVP stuff. I normally just do stuff.
Okay,
Like,
they're just there.
Yeah.
Said like a true MVP. Might I add on?
Yeah, Doki's MVP
I
for
I
sure.
would just go through the stats, I guess. See who's like the top of the stats.
Fair.
Beat them, beat them, and it's actually on 3 of them. I don't think anyone else is on 3. Oh, Billy Word's the other one. That's about it. So I guess
I
those
mean, if
3.
you just peruse the stats, which I believe are publicly available, we've got some insane KDAs here. Now, some of them are only for like 2 games, but the one that jumps out to me is the Funny Man from TD Poro, which again we mentioned in Sector 1.
Yeah.
Has played 11 games, 6 and 5, but has a 10 KDA, or almost 11 actually. So 63 kills and 14 deaths. So something's going on there, and we're gonna see it this upcoming stream week. So be on the lookout for the Funny Man, apparently, if they're on the roster. Very interesting.
That 10 KDA is nuts.
Yeah,
I mean,
especially with 11 games. It's not like a 2-game thing or
11
whatever.
games, that is.
And it's just like a 6-5 score. So it's not like, you popped off a bunch of games in a row. Just no matter if they win or lose, it seems like the KDA is there.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, you look at it, and some of the stats, and they're really interesting. I mean, you look at, speaking of the Funny Man, I mean, if you look at McDuck, his average gold he's currently in 4th. So, I guess it's just doing really well in lane A, Sometimes I just
Sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah. 3rd in turret plates taken. So, I think they're just doing a good job in lane. They're doing their thing. They're just stomping it up. And you look at, another TD Poro player on an active duty, Vanity Pain, their average damage per minute at 1,000. The second closest is at 932, so they're doing really well. Yeah, just fun stuff fun. I mean, stats are always fun to look at, but you always want to look at how these teams are performing in game. Of course, stats will kind of paint the picture of how these teams like to play, if they're top side or bot side focused, and where their gold allocation is going towards and stuff like that. So, All right. I guess that's our segment for Arbiter. Moving on to Sentinel. Sentinel is a little bit interesting this week. I guess I'll start with myself. TD blessed. We lost 2-0 to
What
Brawlhalla
happens?
Thunder. You know, I have to. You know,
you were sick.
Yeah. You know, last week I kind of went on a little, like I hyped my team up a little bit, only for us to get 2-0. So, it is what it is. I think every team has one of those games. Unfortunately, it just went into it. They came in more prepared than we were, and they're the better team on the day. So, shout out to Brawl Lives Matter. They played a great 2 games, and ultimately just a nice series for us to VOD review. Learn from it, get better. Pick it up next week. And then just recap. I mean, we had 4 games this week. We didn't have 3. We had 4. So hey, there we go. Like I mentioned earlier, Angie 2-1 NLR. NLE Valkyries a 2-0 dropping point, and then Roar 2-0 Conduit. So hey, Roar bouncing back this week. NLE continuing their climb. Angie remains top of the table, and then Bless took a punch on the chin. So no more undefeated season. Fun stuff overall this week. Were there any games that caught your eye? I guess I'll go to Taco first. Anything in Sentinel that kind of stuck out to you?
I'm gonna be real. I haven't watched much of the games yet. I didn't see Sentinel's game or had a chance to watch them, so
Fair enough.
can't give you an honest answer there.
I am seeing that, at least for last week, Doki was on both of the RAR games and 2-0'd, so is that right for
Okay.
Sentinel? Yeah, that's what it says
Yeah.
here at least.
That
So
is correct.
multiple league all-star Doki showing up. Playing. Did
Maybe
you play
Doki
in,
is the true MVP.
right? Did you play in Crusader? I'm gonna check that too real quick. No, unfortunately, some no-name beef, no offense beef, took over for Doki in the jungle for Crusader, but still, being in 2 leagues is really awesome, I think.
Just going over any. I mean, Angie continues to roll. I think this is a team that we'll probably end up seeing. They'll probably end up finishing first.
Which is great for the memes.
Yeah, great for the memes. We're gonna be seeing a lot of GERs in chat. Great for the copy pastas in the Twitch chat. It's gonna be fun. Happy to see they're doing well. I think they just continue to roll. I mean, all their players are performing really well on form. Outrage continuing to show he's probably the best ADC in the league and making a good case for MVP. Sadness as well. So good for them. Brawl Lives Matter, taking down TD Bless. They're looking to cement themselves in that second place spot, along with NLE. NLE just kind of a little quietly, just kind of rising up. I mean, they're currently holding second. Brawl Lives is in third. Of course, they had their head-to-head the week prior, so they're just looking to cement themselves there. I mean, Brawl Lives Matter, great team. I mean, caught me by surprise. That's all I can say. I lost 2-0 to them, so that's it. And of course, TD Bless currently sitting 4th, and we're gonna be looking to bounce back. Overall, RAR with that 2-0 win move up to 5th. Conduit is now 6th. NLC Large Rods taking the game off Angie. They're now 3 and 6 in 7th place, and then dropping point, unfortunately, still on that losing streak. They are 2 and 6. So
yeah, I'm hoping they can pick it up, but only the top 5 teams for Sentinel get to go into playoffs, and they've got a few weeks left, right? It's week 4. They've got 5 weeks left to really pick it up. Now,
yeah,
I'm curious,
That's
do
gonna
they
be
have their
hard.
buy yet? Because that could help. Yeah, they have one buy at least between now and then, so that'll help at least a little bit. It's
Yep.
kind of helpful to remember that, like, sometimes if there's a bye week involved, you have to remember that some teams have got a 2-0 that they didn't necessarily, or that other teams have coming, essentially. And Dropping Point hasn't gotten theirs yet, so they're not as dire as things seem. But I mean, the standings don't lie, right? You still got quite a ways to go to get to that fifth.
Unfortunately, in Dropping Point's case, week 1 they 2-0'd Veracity, and Veracity dropped after that week. So
So
Oh,
they earned their
yeah,
buy
they
for that
earned their
one.
bye. Yeah, unfortunately. So with how they're sitting right now, they are really going to be looking to try and bounce back. I mean, this week they're against me and TD Blessed, so we'll see how that matchup ends up going. We're looking to bounce back after our hard loss to Brom Labs, and they're looking to break their losing streaks. That's going to be a fun game to watch, if I'm being honest, just to see how that one turns out. They're in a more dire situation than we are, but we're not going to be taking them lightly.
Absolutely. Sometimes it's whenever a team is like, we need to win to get to playoffs. That's when they play the best.
Of
So
course, yep.
don't take them easily for sure.
Will not. Should be a fun game. I'm excited. All right. Any I don't know. I guess I kind of touched on the MVP discussion a little bit, but are there players that are sticking out to you guys in Sentinel? Outrage doing really well, Sadness doing really well. Very talented in the mid lane for Angie. You can literally just point out every Angie player and just be like, they're doing well. So it's just a little bit hard. Any other players catching your eye?
Unfortunately,
other than
Tuesday is my
go
off
ahead.
day. So it's, yeah, Tuesday is my off day. I have something in real life every Tuesday. So I haven't been able to check it too much. But I do like that. Does Razors for Life actually play for Conduit in
Yeah.
Sentinel as well? Okay, so there are two players that are playing in both leagues. Now it does seem like his strategy of just blind pick Yon did not work out well for them against RAR last week, at least. I
Yeah,
don't know if it was blind pick, but still.
Yeah, Razors. He might be stomping in Arbiter, but he is having a little bit of a tougher time in Sentinel.
But honestly, maybe Arbiter players should look at that and like see the games that Razors plays on stream for Sentinel and see like what happens whenever. What are people doing to answer this?
Fair.
But that's one player that's kind of interesting to me, at least.
I would say Outrage. I really enjoy watching him. Saw him play last split when I
Mhm.
was coaching. I forgot their name. Um, an old team, and I believe it was IBSG at the time. Maybe
Mhm.
it was the gold, but him and my ADC or the the ADC I was coaching were the top two. So it's always fun seeing him still strive.
Oh yeah, for sure. I went in a whole spiel last week about how I don't think how I think it's hard for an ADC to kind of cement themselves in an MVP discussion, because I don't know, I'm going to rehash I guess now, but it's just one of those things where if your team is doing really well, then I think the ADC player just ends up being a product of the team doing really well. So it's really hard to stand out as ADC. But I think he's doing a good job. I think he's getting to that, he's entering that threshold of, okay, maybe he actually is the MVP. I still think Sadness probably has a good argument for being MVP, because you look at look how he supports that team, and he is their shot caller. So he is the one that's kind of pulling them through these games. I mean, he's currently sitting at 121 assists.
There you
That's
go.
quite a lot.
That's insane. That is insane for jungle. So very active in that position. Um, So yeah, overall, I mean, very talented, leading the mid laners in KDA. They have 104 assists. I mean, granted, I mean they're doing really well, and I think they've played the most games out of every other team.
Mhm.
I think they've had the most 3-game series. Um, so of course their stats are going to be a little bit inflated because of how many games they've played. Um, but they're doing really well. So, and that's really, I think as a team, it's really interesting to talk about because as a team, when you're in a lot of 3-game series, that helps you prepare for playoffs really well because you're put into those positions where you have those must-win games. So helps control the pressure. There's something to be said about that.
I was looking at the schedule for next week, and the stream game is pretty interesting. I mean, you're gonna see Doki, so no complaints
The
there, right?
MVP.
Assuming
we
Doki
add?
is showing up, it could be some
MVP
other
Doki,
random
yeah.
jungler. But for an
Doki
off-stream
MVP.
game, there is NLE Valkyries versus Angie. And NLE currently is in second place pretty clearly. So if
That
anyone
will
can
be
take them down another peg, that would definitely be something to watch out for.
That
If
one's going
it's-
to be really interesting for me to watch. I think that one's going to be the game I have my eyes on. Because that kind of will tell us a little bit about NLE. Because right now with NLE, like they won a close series against Bromlast, and I think the other games they've played have been blowouts.
Mhm.
So I think it'll be interesting to see if they're able to take down Angie. I think that really tells us that really gives us an indication of their power level. So that'll be exciting. The other games are kind of, we already touched on TD Blast versus Dropping Point. That one's going to be more of Dropping Point looking to come back.
And that's the only other game, right? Because there's a buy and then another buy currently.
Wow, wait. Okay.
Oh.
I love Sentinel.
Time flies.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate because you have a team drop out, but the schedule's already created, so there's already one buy, and unless the team that dropped out gets the buy, there's only going to be 3 matches. So,
Yeah.
but all 3 are kind of interesting in their own right. Hard to choose which one to stream. Currently, we are streaming Sentinel RAR versus Needlessly Large Rods, which will be exciting. But yeah, only 3 matches for the rest of the split, I think, basically.
Indeed. So.
Oh, I just also noticed that Enki just is getting their official buy at the last week, so they've gotten their first buy from beating Veracity.
But if you look, don't they? Oh yeah, you're right actually.
Yeah, so they basically played every week except for the week they played against Veracity, which was the week they dropped out. So, they're one of 4 teams that have not gotten their official buy, basically. Kind of interesting to see how that'll shake out.
I remember looking at Angie's schedule and just being like, wait a second, But if you look right, Angie, they were supposed to play Veracity week 8, and then if you look at it, they're supposed to play Veracity week 8, so they have a bye week 8, and then they have their official bye week 9.
Oh dear! And if there's tiebreakers, they literally get 3 weeks off. That would be so sad for them.
Wait, hold on. If they end up in one of the first 2 places, they get another bye.
Wait.
So
okay. So
they get a whole month off. There is a potential for Angie to have an entire month off to end the split.
That's definitely something. It's a very unique situation.
So
they get a show match or something, like get those players warmed up because you can't take a month off. That's crazy.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would hate that as a player, having a whole month off.
Like put them into put them in Crusader for a week, see what happens.
So I think
for a show match.
Unfortunately that's just the result of
you're gonna make them Angie.
Yeah, oh man, I think that's the one thing I remember when I first saw that, because I was looking at everyone's schedule and I was just like, wait, that's crazy.
I bet the players haven't even done that yet, so you're informing them for the first time. Maybe there won't be tiebreakers, but even then, I think I don't remember how LXC works. If there's no tiebreakers, does it move up a week for playoffs? I don't remember. So it will do that, luckily. So they just have to hope there's no tiebreaker. And that they only get 3 weeks off. No big deal.
3 weeks is crazy. That's
oh
fair.
My goodness.
But, you also have to think about it this way, though. Because of how it's structured, it's a week by week. They'll end up, even if it's 3 weeks, that's still a month.
Yeah, basically.
Because by the time they play, because they'll finish their game, by the time they play their next game, if it's 3 weeks off, that's a month. So that's actually a month and a week.
Yeah, just schedule
There's
your
a tiebreaker.
vacation. Focus
Schedule your
on a different.
vacation, yeah.
Play some WoW or
Maybe-
something for a little bit.
Maybe play in a different league for a month. So that'll be interesting. All right, we kind of got a little bit sidetracked with schedule talk. I guess that's it for Sentinel. I don't think there's anything else to really talk about. We can go ahead and move on to how's Crusader looking?
So for Crusaders, I'll just go through the stats first on who's like, on the stats now.
Mhm.
So stats wise, you got Griffin from SAD, which is Summoners After Dark, and then you got Striker, who's also from Summoners After Dark. So not together, but individually, they have Killer, Helper, Creep Killer. Their top 2 and 3 for Better with Friends, which is kill participation.
Mhm.
They have Active Duty as second, McDuck for first, and who's where was one more? Nope, that's it. But they have pretty much both of the leaderboards at duo as of right now. So for stat base, those would be my MVP. And then recapping from last week. So we have SS beating OMT Zeus. They went to a 3 games, which is surprising to me because of the standing. Zeus being 6 and them being, I think they were 4 for third at the time. Then you have Summoners After Dark versus Cage Monkey, which was pretty much a top 4 team on Sector 2 playing against each other, going to Game 3. Yeah, Galaxy Gaming versus Expire Bandits. This was a game I was actually interested in. We also went to Game 3. Galaxy Gaming won. Yeah, Constituent Yellow and Optimal Esports Prodigies. Contingent Yellow 1-2-0. First 2-0 game. You have Cloud Gaming Blue Moon versus Raw Crusader. That was also 2-0 with Cloud Gaming winning. You got NLE versus Divine Temple, and NLE won that. You had 3 games that went to 2 games, and you had 3 games that went to 3 games. It's pretty a busy day. Standing wise, I don't know if you guys follow Crusaders. Standing wise, does it look what you're expecting playoffs to look like?
For the most part, I think so. I think what the cutoff is 5, I assume.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I think for the most part, optimal. I think we maybe assume to do a little bit better. I know Expired Bandits. We talked about last week as a team we're gonna keep our eye on in regards to them not really showing their true form, and they're a team that could look to move up in the standing. So I guess we'll just continue to keep an eye on them. Contingent Yellow and Summoners After Dark. Those 2 teams in Sector 2 are just kind of doing their thing. Summoners After Dark, of course, leading a lot of our stats. They're a team that really play around each other, so they're doing really well. Clown Gaming Blood Moon, they just continue their tear. They are absolutely obliterating in Sector 1. They have 8 wins and everyone else has 4 or less. So that's kind of whack actually. So they're doing really well. But apart from that, I think you look at the standings and you just kind of go, well, I think OMT Zeus has probably a good chance to maybe still come up. I think they're not playing to their level. And I don't know. I think that's kind of it, really. I think everything else is kind of going expected.
Well, there is one thing to bring up. Whenever Blood Moon has 8 wins, right, and 1 loss, so you look at the rest of because there's someone just basically winning like a reverse buy or whatever. Everyone else is super close. Like you look at Team 2 and you're like, oh man, Expired Bandits is so close to being removed. They're sixth place and they need to get fifth place. They have to go so far to get anywhere close to the top. They're only one win short of second. So
Yeah.
like it's actually kind of absurd. The way that CG Blood Moon has just been coming in and destroying teams has led the other teams to all just be in a scramble for the rest of the matches, and it really depends on when they get their bye, along with how they perform in the future, of course, to see who will actually move forward into playoffs.
Yeah, I guess my correction would be I'm not surprised with how the teams are currently, but yeah, you are correct. They are very close to each other. So anything can change in Sector 1. Sector 2, on the other hand, looking a little more grim.
Mm-hmm. But there's one thing about OMT. They were streamed this week. They put Dark Magician Girl. They said, you know what? We're not putting her support anymore. We're going to put her mid lane. And she did well all 3 games. Now, there was some talk about how perhaps the reason why she was able to play so aggressive is because Hep was playing jungle, a role he's never played, with a laptop on a beach, basically. That might be a bit of an inside joke, but essentially Hep was on vacation, had to come back, play on stream for Syndicate Strokers in a role that he really doesn't play, just because of how their roster turned out. So maybe OMT Zeus performed a little bit more than you would expect, but Dark Magician Girl just went from support all split to mid lane and one lane 3 times in a row. So definitely unexpected and might show signs of growth for OMT.
If they continue to be playing mid, that'll be fun to watch. See how their growth ends up going.
I mean, I have the SS making playoffs. No, it's just
Yeah,
depends.
well, I hope that Hep gets to get back to vacation or get a jungler that, or play a role that he knows how to play, I guess. It was very funny seeing like what things they had to do. They had to put him on a moo, and like Hep is a good player, but it was clear that he was not comfortable in that.
That's one of those things where you just pick the most handsless champions and just focus on farming and you just pray.
Yeah, exactly.
You just pray you don't get invaded, or you just look to try and impact the map as much as you can.
But at the same time, like I'm saying, Dark Magician Girl moving from support to mid lane is not a move you see very often. And you definitely don't see it where she gets to pop off like that. So something to look at going forward, especially in 2 weeks from now, whenever that'll be our stream match versus OMT Zeus versus Contingent Yellow.
Let's go underdogs. What can I say?
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone loves the underdog. All right. Any players that stick out to you guys in the MVP? I know that Doki already kind of touched on it a little bit. But are there some players you guys think are going under the radar?
I would just have to agree with Doku on this one.
Sunners After Dark, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. You know, that team is just doing their thing. When you have a player like Striker who's leading a lot of those stat sheets, it is very hard to argue against.
Stats.
That
Yeah, stats are nice and clean, that stuff. For sure.
I just want to shout out my boy Resilient. Did not get canceled this week. If that's a little comment regarding last week.
Okay.
Did not get canceled this week, so good job for him. Gonna be, I mean, Clown Gaming, they're doing well. Shout out to you, Resilient. Hope you guys continue to do well. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's Crusader. Let's go ahead and move on to Warden then.
All right. So we have Syndicate Esports still in first place. I forgot they got dethroned. Syndicate got dethroned by Shurikens last night. So those are swapped. Then we got Black Frost Gaming. Then we got Esports Orange RAR coming at 5th. NLE at 6th and Ego at 7th. I was watching a little bit of last night's game, um, as I was zoning out of my class. um, it was a pretty good game, going back and forth. Uh, saw a good couple plays. Uh, I believe Coffee Beans was playing,
Mm-hmm.
and he looked pretty nice with his movements. And
Yeah. I mean, you look at these games, and I think there are some. Uh, you look at these games because of the players. I mean, this is the highest tier that we have here. So these players, of course, you look towards, and I think we had a really fun topic last week about items, where we looked at what items they're building, and we were just making some interesting choice. They were making some interesting choices, but it's really fun to look at a higher ranked player and then watch them play. I think you can learn a lot and just be impressed with how they go into each game and how they play, what strats they're using, what champs they're picking, what's the itemization into certain matchups. It's always a good thing to look out for. Looking at just the results of this week, Seneca we talked about a lot last week. They finally got dethroned this week, so that's really big. First, good job to Shurikens for getting that done. Kudos. That was one of the games that we looked at last week. We're just like, that's the game. That's the game. So, unfortunately, it doesn't move them up in the standings because Seneca had such a big lead, to where them losing didn't really impact them too bad. But it does cement Shurikens in second place. So a little bit top heavy in Warden. Unfortunate to see Ego Nog still at the bottom. I was hoping for them to bounce back last week, so unfortunately, looks like they're still continuing to have a hard time. But do you guys think the standings are at I mean, with the top heavy league, I guess it's a little bit harder to
Well,
talk about
okay, so I just want to
surprises.
point this out, right? So the reason why the standings look like they do is because Dropping Point has 2 losses and it only has 6 wins because they have a bye. They haven't lost a match yet. They have not lost a
Oh
match yet.
shoot!
And the one of their losses that's right there, the 6-2, one of those is the 3-0 essentially that they had against RAR. I don't know. I mean, you can see them quietly standing in third place. They've already beaten Shurikens. That's their Shurikens' one loss. And they're going to be facing Seneca on the stream match in 2 weeks from now. So, they're in third place on the books, but there is an argument that they might just come in from surprise and get first place before the season ends. So they haven't lost yet, essentially. And, you can see the 2 over there for the game loss. And that was against, I believe, RAR Street Logic. We saw that 3-game series on stream. I have to look specifically what other team gave them a loss. But if I had to guess, it'd probably be Shuriken. So
Also, I'd like to correct myself really quick. Because of because of Shurikens beating Seneca, they actually hold a tiebreaker over them. So technically speaking, Shurikens is in first.
yeah, exactly.
so first place can be taken by anybody, pretty much.
Yeah,
Yes, this is still very much in flux.
This is I mean, Contingent is going to be eyeing in outside, looking in at the top 3 and being like, hey, we have a shot. So top 4 of this league is going to be where it's at. I think they're going to be really trying to secure that bye for themselves. Or is there no bye? No, there is a bye. Yeah, I'm correct.
So many different leagues with different rules for playoffs.
Yeah,
hard.
I have to double check. But they're gonna be eyeing that first place bye. So right now, Seneca and Shurikens are neck and neck, but of course, like you said, Dropping Point, secretly, quietly having a really good season so far. We'll see how they match up against Seneca in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I might put myself on the stream for that one, week 6, just real quick. Check that real quick. Or at least figure out if I want to watch it if I'm not asking that. It looks very exciting.
Looking at the bottom of the table though. Unfortunately, I think with this loss, I think Ego Nog is gonna have a really hard. I mean, granted, they're 2 wins behind. They're 2 wins behind Roar right now, but as things stand right now, Ego Nog's gonna have a hard climb. NLE Legionnaires kind of barely outside looking in. How are you feeling about these bottom teams? Do you think they have a shot of maybe slipping into 5th?
NLE would be the only team that I would say has a shot.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ego Nai is just kind of, if I was a player on the team, kind of discouraged. And I would try my hardest, but I know there's not a real shot at getting into the playoffs.
Yeah, they've had some tough losses. Let's see. It was who they play this week. Oh, they play Contingent. So, yeah. This was I think last week I talked about Ego and the Contingent game a little bit, and I was saying that with Ego, this would be a game where if they were able to take a game off Contingent or even win, it'd look really good for them. But unfortunately, I believe it was a 2-0 loss. So, unfortunate for them. Hope they get some. Hopefully, they end up, getting a win or two. But yeah, looking a little grim for them.
Well, everyone likes an underdog story, and there's still 3 weeks
True.
left, so
3
it's
weeks
definitely
left.
possible.
It's possible. It's
Let's see.
tough.
So they have to face Raw Street Logic next week. So that will probably be like
there
they're
it is.
determining.
Yeah, that's
There it is.
They're determining, like for both teams, honestly, right? Like the winner of that has a chance, essentially. After that, they face NLE, and then
wait.
Dropping Point.
Hold.
It's a really tough schedule after that.
Wait. They have Roar and NLE in the next 2 weeks.
That's true.
So,
That's true. So the next 2 definitely is a moment for Ego Nog. Like, hey, we've been facing the top teams. Like, don't give up on us yet.
So there's hope. Maybe there's hope if they're able to beat both Roar and NLE.
Yeah, and NLE is going against Shurikens too. So next week, or I guess
But
this
for
week.
RAR as well, like, I mean, they're currently in 5th place. And right now for their schedule, it's literally Ego Nog, last place currently. And then Contingent Esports Orange, which is the one right above them. And then they get a bye. So, RAR has also faced the top teams essentially. And so it's going to be hard to catch up with them as well. So, like, all these teams, like, unfortunately, partially, a lot of their weakness looks like just by how their schedule looked like as well. Had to face against the teams that are currently in the top.
Makes that battle for 5th a little bit more interesting. So maybe Ego, it might not be as hopeless as we may have first said. I think you guys have a shot. Also, just looking now, Roar Street Logic has 8 losses.
Yeah, it's because they haven't had a bye yet. So unfortunately, they are 0-4, I believe, because it's week 4. So they've won 3 games. One of them was streamed, I believe. No, 2 of them were streamed. But they have gone 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 0-2, essentially.
Dang. So they're in 5th. Even okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Wins.
All the
3
strong
wins,
teams have faced the basically lower seed teams, which
Yeah.
is kind of how it works out. But except the strong teams haven't faced each other that much. So now we're just going to see 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th play against each other essentially a lot, with one of them randomly facing Dropping Point in there to see who actually gets 5th. All of them have basically been stomped by the top 3, but who is going to be in the bottom 4 in the places that get them into playoffs after they face each other? This is how the schedule worked out.
All right. Well, there you guys have it for the standings and upcoming matchups. Are there any players that are sticking out to you guys in the MVP discussion? Taco, do you have anyone that kind of sticks out?
I had to go with Coffee Beans. That's who I would keep it with. They're leading pretty much everything in the leaderboards that you can
Mhm.
lead in.
Mm-hmm.
And even running Deathless too. So it's hard keep killing him.
What roles do they play? Because I know on the roster themselves they have him as sub,
I
but
saw him
I'm
play
assuming.
AD.
Hmm.
So, which if you can stay alive, you have a shot.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of AD carries, I have to mention Koda's name again because I was just looking at the losses. So again, dropping point has 2 losses.
Mm-hmm.
And the loss where they were 4v5, the KDA for Coda. Let me just bring this up again because it's so insane. Coda went 17 kills, 3 deaths on Ezreal. Of course, they lost because their jungler was level 12 at like 30 minutes, 40 minutes in. But and even in their week 1 loss, Coda again had a positive KDA going Zion going 5, 3, and 13. So I don't believe that this man has had a negative KDA in any game, even their losses.
Yeah. You have a really good point. Mhm.
Yeah, apparently, according to the stats, they're just like right neck and neck. Coda
Yeah,
has died 8
yeah.
times, apparently, and Coffee Beans has died 6. So I'm very excited for. Did they play whenever? Because week 1 was whenever Dropping Point played against Shurikens. I'm getting my teams mixed up now. Okay, yeah. So so Coffee Beans was not playing to make sure these are the right orgs. Coffee Beans was not playing whenever Dropping Point and AKS played against each other. So technically our potential MVPs have not played against each other, and they won't until playoffs.
That's gonna be hype.
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
Winner, yeah,
play,
winner takes all. I'm sorry.
yeah, there you
Exactly.
go.
Whoever wins clearly the MVP. There you go.
Bot lane, you know, I gotta shout out the supports because I think they're
Mhm.
not talked about enough. Um, so shout out to Viva. Or I think I'm pronouncing that right. On dropping point, they're currently leading in assists with 128. So I mean,
Yeah,
granted,
and
when you have Coda as your ADC, I think it makes life
well,
a little
to that point, actually, late game, yes, but in the mid and early game, from what I was watching last night of Warden, Coda was not. It was often left alone while they went to Herald and stuff. So I don't think it's necessarily just because of the star power of Coda. I mean, I could be wrong. I don't have the stats directly, like where those assists are, but I do think that a lot of that is Viva making plays on the other side of the map while Coda just farms.
I think that honestly almost makes it a little bit more impressive. If you're a
Mm-hmm.
support that's able to go around the map, roam, help your team out in other places, I think that's really cool, really impressive. Um, so you know, shout out to them. I mean, it also just makes Coda a little bit more impressive too. You know, playing weak side bot. You know that can be a little tough.
Well, I've only watched one stream of Coda specifically. I'm mostly going off stats, so that's just like
fair
my
enough.
initial impression. But we'll have to see for sure over the upcoming weeks how that works.
Yeah, no, I mean, dropping point and Akuma are basically all over our KDA sheet. Shout out to Orange. They are also 3 players are on there with Cherry, Mocha, and Peels. So shout out to them. They're doing well. They're doing well.
But I do expect to see the stats for the lower teams come up as they play each other.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll get an inside look of which members of those teams are really going to pop off, and then try to be the carrying back for the playoffs whenever they do have to face the top 3 teams again.
Mm-hmm. There are a lot of unsung heroes on those bottom tier teams that, you know, unfortunately when you're up against the top tier teams, you end up getting a little stomped, and then it affects your stats. So we don't, yeah, like you said, it's hard to really see who's standing out. I just noticed that one of Dropping Point's players' names is She Shriven, and thank you. I know. Nah, sorry. Bad dad joke. I apologize. All right. Guess that's our Warden discussion. I guess we can go into our community questions. So, I lied. There is one more thing to talk about Warden.
Ooh.
Something that I just now noticed that's a little insane is Leday's 32 solo kills.
Okay, well, that's pretty notable for sure. I'm glad you brought it up because it's definitely worth talking about.
Like 32. Second place has 9. What is going on?
So this is for Seneca Esports, correct?
Yeah, I mean it's Seneca, but whoa.
Now, I'm gonna look through the games because Ladays is mentioned on the roster as a sub. I'm assuming he's not getting that many kills from sub role. So I'm gonna look through and see what role he's been playing whenever he has been playing. It looks like top lane is generally where he's at, yeah. Which definitely is one of those solo kill lanes, but wow.
I mean, as a product of 32 solo kills, he's also leading the dishes done 46 turret plates.
Mm-hmm.
Keep that man in the side lane.
Holy
Right?
moly.
I'm looking at the champion pool that he's played at least in tournament games too, and there's some nice and spicy ones. You know, the Yone and the let me just double check. There was another one that really dropped out. Gwen, of course, classic, but like Yone top lane, very exciting. And then Jace as well, which I mean, I know we're getting up to the higher level with Warden, but I did not expect to see Jace at, amateur level. And yet Seneca played it, Leday's played it, 16 kills, 1 death.
I love a good Jace game.
Mm-hmm.
I love to play in mid lane. Wow. Shout out. And you're kind of almost sad we almost missed over that.
Right. Very important thing to bring up. Those days would have been like writing in like, hey, am I in like some kind of weird no talk about zones? Like, come on, man. What do I have to do?
Yeah, I think we put a rated R rating on his games because his top lane play has just been absolutely disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
No, shout out. Wow. Very impressive. Carry tops, just like in general, we don't see like in some of the team play stuff. As a carry top laner, it can be a little bit hard. But if you're, he's rolling. So
yeah, and the nice thing is, it's not on one champion either. Like,
yeah,
he's played Jace a few times. I think Yone once or whatever, but at most games are just a different champion. So it's not like you can just ban his one trick and be fine.
I think a lot of players in team play kind of end up going into it as like, especially top laners. They end up just going into this. I'm a tank. I'm just gonna be there to facilitate the team.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna play around mid. We're gonna play around bot lane. But Leday's is just like, nah. I'm the carry. So shout out. Hold on 1 second so I can get it open. Scarlet.
Yeah.
If you could Yumi with someone in real life, who would it be?
This is such an interesting question because you think about Yumi and like they don't really translate to real life unless you're like just trying to hang out or whatever, I guess. But one thing I did think about was the Olympics. Because if you could be like on an athlete's back and like speed them up or like try to get them through some tight corridors, whatever, that'd be cool. Or maybe tuck in their pants whenever they're going over a pole.
Oh my god.
I think that would probably be my answer. But then I thought about it some more and I was like, isn't that basically what horse riding basically is? I mean, obviously the horse riders are very talented and doing some real stuff, but they're kind of like Yumi on a horse there.
All I'm gonna say is, needlessly large Roz need to get in contact with that pole.
Right, exactly. It was very needless for sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Question for myself: most surprising champion stats. Whew. Some interesting things that I saw was that Alistar in Sentinel, I think, is currently the most picked support by a wide margin. I think 10 games played of Alistar. So I I think I played against it this week. It's really interesting what support, like, I think each league is kind of forming their own little meta. So it's really interesting to see some of these picks that are coming out. Of course, Jinx and Misfortune are still leading it. Kaisa is actually coming back into it. Kennen, of course, 7 games played. Kennen is, we mentioned it last week, but Kennen continues to be a champion that we just, in Sentinel, have been seeing a lot of, and I guess that's just kind of because we have 2 players that like to play it. So, Kennen is coming out in pro a little bit, so it is one of those things where he is in a strong spot, so we're going to see more of him. Mordekaiser is really interesting. We have 6 games of Mordekaiser being played in Sentinel. So that's a champion. Looking at other leagues, stuff that I've been seeing. Ashe is the hot commodity in Arbiter right now, along with Leona. Ashe and Leona are currently, I think, they might be the most picked, if I'm being honest. Let me double check that really quick. Yeah, Ashe Leona right now. Leona's been picked in Arbiter 30 times. So I mean, with the Warmogs build, she's very strong. Ashe, of course, is one of those ADCs that we see a lot just because of their enabling ability. But I don't know, 30 games of Leona, I feel like teams need to start catching on a little bit more. She isn't banned. It's like most picked is Leona, but if you look at the bans, she isn't even in the top 10 bans.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just letting her through.
I think I saw Leona ban last night, actually, or maybe Wednesday. Because, yeah, she's just like quietly one of those supports that you don't really think about too much, but whenever she's on your face, you're like, man, we should have banned this champion.
Yeah. Also, a really interesting stat. Really interesting. Because this champion hasn't been good for a while. However, now he did get that cool little adjustment to where his tank stats kind of influences AP is Sylas. Arbiter has banned Sylas 26 times.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very interesting to me. Because Sylas is, granted, Sylas has been in this really weird spot recently, but with these new buffs, he is kind of coming back into the limelight. But like, I would never expect Sylas to be the most banned champion in any league. Period. Yeah. I think there are more pressing champs. Looking at Crusader, I guess I'll just go through every league. Crusader has caught on though. Leona is the most banned in Crusader. So, there we go. Braum is the most picked in Crusader, so that's a little bit surprising to me. But granted, with Jinx and MF being on the table, maybe it's not as surprising. I take that back. Braum's just a really good support to both. And then finally, Warden. Also, Leona most banned in Warden. So, Arbiter, maybe take a look.
Right, exactly.
All right. So those are some of the picks that I kind of looked at and saw that were interesting. Of course, I know Sentinel best, so I mentioned a little bit more in Sentinel. But moving on to Doki, OP champ pick of the week.
Let's see. Well, obviously every league has its own meta,
Mm-hmm.
but right now what's rising is pretty much, I think since what, Leona and
Yeah, Leo is the big one.
Leona
And
and
Arbiter.
Well, Leona's like it's across most leagues. She's in top 10 for most leagues right now.
Yeah,
Most picked and banned. There's
yeah.
and Braum was the beginning one. Then it
Mhm.
rotated to Leona after she got those buffs. Then it rotated to um Kaisa.
Yeah, Kaisa and Warden. Yeah, Kaisa's the most picked in Warden right now.
Ashe is prevalent in all leagues It was Ash
Mhm.
Prom, then rotate to Leona. I think that's the main three. Brand's not really like picking up as much anymore, but still being banned sometimes. Oh, Shyvana, there we go. Shyvana. That's
Yeah,
the one that took everyone by surprise.
I
I hate
agree.
I had to play it now.
Yeah, Shyvana, I think every jungler is just like, ooh. So, I think that one's she's pretty OP. I do think when it comes to higher tiers of play, she does kind of fall off a little bit. I think she really thrives when she's able to just um, farm it up
For free,
and
yeah.
yeah, farm for free. So it is a little bit harder when you get up into like Warden, because of the fact that a lot of junglers kind of know how to track and know how to invade and punish her, or at least I would hope. So, yeah, all right. Question number 4. How does Teemo Q blind Lee Sin when he is already blind? Um, so Scarlet, do you think he can
I mean,
explain?
maybe. Okay, so first of all, taking things literally is so hard because, like, they did it with Cassiopeia. They're like, oh, wow, people joke about Cassiopeia wearing boots, so they removed the ability for her to wear boots, and it's just
Right.
very silly. I don't think it's a good idea to, like, really dive into
Listen-
these other than for
Listen,
fun.
the
Could you
people gotta
imagine?
know.
Okay, look, I don't mind answering this question. I'm just saying, could you imagine that they're like, you know what, you're right, we should change that. And then, like, you had to explain to a Teemo player who's, like, really new, like, why could he still auto-attack me whenever I press my Q that says they can't auto-attack me? I don't get it. So, like, this is definitely more for fun questions than I think should affect the game. But my take on it is that Teemo Q is actually more disorienting than actually blinding. So it
Mhm.
doesn't like put a blindfold over your eyes or anything. It just kind of messes with the stuff in your brain. And for most people, because they rely on sight so much, the first thing they notice is that they can't see anymore. Because like if all of
Mhm.
your senses or most of your senses become dual, then one you're gonna notice first is that you can't see. But for Lee Sin, he still relies on other things that are still affected by the Teemo Q. That's my take on it, at least.
That was gonna be my take. I think my take is very similar. Yeah, I think Teemo Q, it affects Lee Sin differently because Lee Sin relies on his other senses more. So I think that's the correct take.
Correct. That's what they intended when they
So,
designed Lee Sin and
listen,
Teemo was in the game.
listen. All I'm saying is that Teemo Q just gets champions high off of shrooms. That's it. Just completely it just injects that
Have you
into
ever
their
seen
veins.
Zeri? Oh my, Zeri is so funny because
It is
mechanically
very
it's very
funny.
different. Just
It is
like
very
randomly
funny.
shoots in a direction, like seeing ghosts over her shoulder.
I wish I saved the clip, but there was I remember there was one game I remember in solo queue. I wish I had this clip, but my Zeri we had a Teemo and they had an enemy Zeri and the enemy Zeri was super fed, like ridiculously fed, and this Teemo was like 1-7. So like like just like giga fed Zeri, really like astro feeding Teemo, and they meet. Teemo cues her. She ults. She fires her Q backwards and then fires it forward and just one shots the Teemo.
Oh man.
So that was really funny. All right. Well, thank you to our guests for today. Thank you guys for coming out. And thank you to the audience. Thank you guys for supporting the podcast. Thank you for tuning in every week. We have a great time here recording for you guys and talking about your leagues. Any final thoughts from our guests? Anything you want to? Any lasting stuff you want to say?
I just think that Warden is going to get really exciting before playoffs end or start. So I think that if you're going to choose one day randomly to show up and decide to just join us at LXC, you should try Thursday. Although you should join us on all the days. All the games have been really good so far. So
All right. Well, and with that, that'll be it for TopHat Lounge episode 5. Thank you guys.